No, I think the film is saying that your relationship with alcohol is unhealthy, but it's okay to have unhealthy relationships.
What?
Oh
No, that is
no!
not.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Blockbuster, where three guys talk about movies that we like and sometimes don't like. My name is Ben. I am your host with the most.
Hi, I'm Mitch. I am the host with the least.
And I'm Lucas. I'm just here.
Excellent. Excellent stuff. Yes, we all had varying degrees of a good week. And today we're going to be talking about a movie called Another Round. Another Round. Another Round is a movie directed by Thomas Vinterberg, who's a Danish director. It came out in 2020 and it was co-written by Thomas Vinterberg and Tobias Lindholm. It stars Mads Mikkelsen, along with three other excellent actors who play four high school teachers who read a study by a psychologist that says that humans are born with a blood alcohol content deficiency of 0.05 and decide to test this theory by drinking heavily and seeing how it affects their lives.
Yeah, excellent. That summarizes the film perfectly. Ben, do you want to kick us off with your subtitle and explain what our subtitles are?
Yeah, so every time we do this, each of us comes up with like a subtitle, a marquee to sort of encapsulate the idea of the movie. Uh, lay my cards on the table. I forgot that we were doing that and made up mine on the spot just a few minutes ago. Mine is Another Round. Mads Mikkelsen gets the opposite of whiskey dick.
Jesus Christ.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No.
Tell me I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Okay. Lucas, what is your subtitle for the film?
Another round. Men in a midlife crisis seek validation from school children.
That sounds really fucking weird. I don't know about that one.
That's so accurate. It's scary.
It's accurate.
Mine is Another Round. Zen and the Art of Alcoholism.
Aye. All right. So, yeah, I guess we'll talk about how we feel about it, and since just kind of sort of like brief thoughts how we felt about it. And since I suggested this movie, I'll go first. I think it's a solid film. I think there's some clear flaws with it, but overall, it's a very straightforward film and an interesting concept done pretty well.
Lucas?
Well, this film has Mads in it, so it already gets a point for that. Overall, I was going into it expecting more of a comedy and less of a drama. I think it is pretty transparent about what it is, and within the first scene, I felt like I had seen the movie.
So you're saying you weren't loving it?
I was not loving it. There's some it is not horrible, but I would not recommend.
That's interesting that you say that you went in expecting a comedy and it wasn't exactly that, because Thomas Vinterberg's talked about how they tried to nail down the feeling, the vibe of the movie. And like, that's how he approaches all of his movies. In the post-production phase, he always tries to or the production and post-production phases, he always tries to concentrate it on one specific idea, feeling, vibe. And he just couldn't do that with this movie because he felt like it was trying to say a lot of different things that are conflicting emotionally.
Interesting.
I can see that.
Yeah, I did not fuck with this film very much. I think there's some cool. I think it's well shot, and that's the last nice thing I think I have to say about the film for the most part.
That's interesting, because that's like one thing I'd say about it is that it's like, in terms of the cinematography, it's not inspired.
Yeah,
but there's a reason for
I mean,
that.
I was looking for nice things to say, Ben. So,
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, I just
So you were
genuine.
being facetious. Okay,
No,
all
I
right.
mean, I think it was pretty. Like, it was fairly pretty. I thought it had some kind of fun music, and yeah, it boldly went where no one thought to go before. The perspective of four middle-aged white men, just like an area that is seldom tread or looked at under a microscope. Truly riveting stuff.
Just to touch on the camera work a little more, it's a very theatrical movie. Most of the content in this movie is going to be found in the characters' performances, the acting. The reason it's directed like it is, which is to say the camera's not locked down to anything, it floats around. It does that to capture characters' performances because Thomas Vinterberg, in his rehearsals for movies, will spend most of the time getting his characters or his actors up to speed on what his characters are, so that they can improvise a lot on set. And he leaves the camera unhinged and flying around so that it can capture that spontaneity. Um, but yeah, that's that. This is all stuff we'll get into. Well, real quick before we hop into the full synopsis, let me just say one more thing to kind of like as an addendum to its introduction. Thomas Vinterberg's described this movie as he intended it to be a movie about drinking specifically. He said he thought about all the powerful people in history like Churchill and FDR who have made decisions while very drunk, and imagined what would have been different if they made those decisions sober. And during the first week of shooting, his daughter, Ida, tragically died in a car accident. And after a brief mourning period, after a mourning period, he returned to shooting with a different take on the movie. He actually had his daughter read the script and made a lot of notes on it that made it into the final film. He said he wanted it to be much more about inspiration and a celebration of life. Whether or not he accomplished that, I guess we'll get into.
Wasn't his daughter, wasn't he planning on having her in the movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, his
Yeah.
daughter. So the main character, Martin, has two kids. They're both his sons. He was intended initially to have a son and a daughter, but his daughter died in a car accident, and they changed that. But there's a lot of scenes with class children, with school children, and they were all classmates of his daughter.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's actually very cute.
Yeah. So the movie starts with a quote from Kierkegaard. The quote is, "What is youth? A dream. What is love? The content of the dream." Do you guys have any thoughts about that quote and how it relates to the movie?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me. It's hard to me to contextualize it within this film, I guess.
I guess if you logic it out, it's kind of saying that uh, love is the content of youth.
I mean, I get the first part of like youth is a dream, and it's like this idea of life and the world that you're in, um, and how that relates to this a lot. But then that the content of that dream is love. That's where I don't see it being connected to this movie.
I think the characters find their love for life through their connection with youth. But I also think that the movie is a lot more observational than it thinks it is. I think it lays a lot of things out on the table and doesn't really dig into any of them.
I agree with that. I think there's a lot of like things it tried to do and it like touched on, but it didn't delve into a lot of those things. And I wanted it to, but we'll get into that.
Okay, so the movie opens with it's all in Danish. I kept saying it was Dutch to my friend that I was watching it with because I'm an idiot, but it's all in Danish. Mads
This
Mikkelsen.
isn't a geography podcast, so I think you're safe with us,
Oh,
The
no.
opening sequence introduces us to this event that a bunch of high school Danish kids put on, which is called the Lake Run, where you run around a lake with a shit ton of beer, and you have to drink an entire beer at each bench. If you puke as a team, you get a time deduction, and you have to do the race as fast as you can. But if you puke alone, then you add time to your final score, and whoever does it the quickest wins. After they do this run, explain the rules and do a montage of the run, all these youths are seen debaucherizing the town. They handcuff a police officer to a railing. They're hopping all over streetlights and shit. Music's blaring in the background, and then we smash cut to the credits.
Yeah, that smash cut like hit me. I was like, Jesus, whoa, god damn.
Yeah, like blacking out.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, very much so.
I'll also say, as an American watching this, it took me, I was like, oh, this is like, they're college kids. And then I checked myself real quick and I was like, oh, yeah, these are high school kids drinking alcohol.
Yeah. So yeah, then after the smash cut and credits, we go into a very quiet room full of teachers who are talking about the kids who handcuffed the officer to the railing, mentioning that it might be time to do something about the youth's consumption of alcohol. One detail to note in this scene is all the adults who are talking about those damn kids are all drinking water and munching on carrots. We're then introduced to the main characters who are all teachers. There's four of them. There's Peter, Tommy, Nikolai, and then our main character Martin, played by Mads Mikkelsen, who I think we should refer to as Daddy for the rest of the podcast.
That's appropriate. Also, if you ever watch the show Hannibal, he makes cannibalism chic.
He is extremely hot, very hot. Yeah. They're a gym teacher, a music teacher, a psych teacher, and a history teacher. And they're introduced to us at the beginning of each of their respective classes for, I assume, the school year. And none of them seem particularly passionate about being there. They're all shot in such a way that they're disconnected from the rest of their students, either blocked far away or composed opposite. Like, for example, the music teacher is seen facing his entire classroom of students, but you see the back of his head. The gym teacher is completely removed and reading a newspaper while his students are running around the gym. You're definitely clued into the fact that these guys are not relating to kids, to their kids. The main character goes home, has dinner with his family, and asks his wife afterwards if she thinks he's become boring. She replies, "Compared to what, when you were young?" And then says, "You're not the same Martin I first met." And he seems really disappointed with the answer, but also glad he expected it.
Yeah, there's a big lack of lust for life in the start, for sure.
Yes.
It's a very I think my first note is routine, boring start of the semester. Martin seems depressed. That was my big takeaway from the first couple scenes. His students think he's crap at his job. His family seems fairly indifferent to him.
He's getting insecure because a child called him boring.
Yep, this is all accurate. Yep.
Grow backbone, buddy.
Okay, all right. Like, he's already depressed. We don't have to kick him while he's down.
We'll stop being depressed.
He walks into school the next day, and this sequence, I think, is there's a lot of like competent filmmaking on display, a lot of just details that you would find in a play, a lot of really good like theatrical directing. So there's a lot of good blocking, like character blocking and character performances, subtleties carried around in the performances. In this scene, he walks into school the next day, and everyone else in the scene is walking the opposite direction down the hall. And they're all kids. They're all high school kids, full of energy, jumping around, talking to each other, smiling, having a great time, dressed to the nines, full of energy. And our character is in like a wrinkly ass flannel open t-shirt. He stretches his back because it's clearly hurting him, and he's headed in the opposite direction. He's then yelled at by his classroom of kids who have all brought their parents because they think that his class is too hard, and they want him to be a little more lenient so that they can have a better chance at their future. And his response is essentially, "Stop looking at your damn phones during class."
Maybe if you paid attention.
Yeah. He's a crotchety old man.
To be fair, though, in reality, that is a big issue. Like, teachers these days are fighting against this addiction machine, and it's like unhinged and crazy. But in this situation, yeah, very, very much pushing the blame aside.
Yeah, his first lecture does like damn is a sleep machine, just like. And last year we talked about the Second World War and the mechanisms that which, and you're like, oh my god, dude, like no wonder your kids think you suck.
100%.
One thing to note there is he deliberately corrects his speech and is very specific. Like he corrects the kid from World War who mentions World War II that they're talking about World War One. He speaks very deliberately, and later on, when he starts drinking, he slurs his speech. But yeah, again, it's a very straightforward movie. Clearly, this whole first part of the movie is revolves around showing us how old and crotchety and out of touch and incapable of relating to the youth this main character is. But it's all packaged in little theatrical details.
I think it's super interesting. I don't know if you feel the same way, Mitch, but the fact that Ben, you're posing this as all he is like lost contact with the youth, or I don't know, it's like him being old versus the contrast of the youth. I guess I didn't pick that up initially, and I was just like, he has lost joy for life. Like, I
Yeah,
wasn't comparing him to youth, but like, it makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my perspective as well. Is that I wasn't viewing as just middle aged depression, middle aged like midlife crisis of sorts, but it's not really a crisis. It's more like a midlife slowdown, like a midlife rut. He's in a rut. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a that's what the intention was from the filmmaker. I think there's a lot of like I guess subtext towards the idea that he's that to reconnect with this passion of life, he wants to reconnect with his youth, and that's where the core sort of struggle lies. And we'll get into this more as we go on, but as kind of a summary, the character you can kind of see it throughout the movie. The character thinks that the reason his life or the solution for his malaise is to reconnect with his youth, recapture his youth. And you'll see later on that he does that. He does that so much that he essentially becomes a kid again. But that's not healthy. It's not healthy to do that. And he realizes that it's good to relate to your youth, but it's not good to go back to it. In fact, there's a Big Crit song where he talks about, I wish I was a kid again, running with my friends and them up and down the street. Damn straight, I could never go back, but it would be cool to see. I think that's kind of the spirit of this movie. So yeah, he's straight up not having a good time. He goes over to meet his friend Tommy, pick him up because they're going to go out and have dinner to celebrate Nikolai's 40th birthday. He gets to Tommy's house, and another detail just to ram it down your throat that this guy is old and his life is not going the way he wants it to. Tommy has an old dog that he has to haul out to the backyard and shake its leg to help it piss. And it's a visual representation of our main characters. Anyway, they go out to dinner to a very fancy restaurant to celebrate Nikolai's 40th birthday. And this is a very theatrical scene. It's very long. It's dialogue focused. It's performance focused. So much is carried through the actor's eyes and stuff. I think the scene is particularly well done. So they go out, and Martin is seen drinking water, and it's mentioned as being sensible. His psych teacher friend says that the house mentions that might not be as sensible as you think it is, and then mentions this study that a psychologist has done who claims that humans' blood alcohol content is at a deficit naturally, and that it should actually be at 0.05 because it makes you more sociable and happy. 0.05 mentioned in the movie is 1 or 2 glasses of wine. They bring up that Martin's been having issues in class, and they all say those kids just need to behave, which is the fundamental issue that they identify.
And this is the inciting incident of the film from which the rest of the plot will develop.
I have 2 things to say about this. One being like, I don't know, for me, this didn't feel like super believable. Like, even, the tech CEOs being like, I'm gonna microdose LSD or some like mushrooms or whatever. and that'll help me be more creative, whatever, seems a little more believable and interesting than like, yo, if you're just like a little bit buzzed, like you're gonna have such a better life. It didn't feel reasonable enough for like teachers to be like, yeah, let's start drinking during the work week because of this. Like, I don't know. So it was hard for me to feel that these characters would buy into that, even if they were in a midlife crisis. And then just like too, I like could see the movie from here. It's like, what are the consequences of relying on drinking? And then like
The rest of the movie happens. Yeah, I mean, I knew I was in trouble with this film when like he has that first drink and he just like starts crying, and it's like a really good piece of acting. But I was like, oh, is this like drinking is gonna be the like unlock him, like he just took the limitless pill? Yeah, this was where I started to have a little trepidation about the film's premise, that grew from there. That this is kind of my first sort of red flag for, oh, I don't know how this film is going to work for me as a person, like individually.
Yeah, I agree. I think the premise is kind of like, it sounds interesting on paper. It's one of the reasons I watched the movie. It's sort of tacked on to the plot. The events of the movie could have happened without this sort of premise.
100%.
One of the notes I wrote down about the movie is that I didn't believe that these characters would do it at first either. But first of all, in this scene, I don't think the characters are buying into the idea. They Nikolai mentions it, and then they kind of just offhandedly forget about it. But later on, they all decide to do it. And I wrote a note saying, I don't believe that these guys would just hop on it this easily. It seems like they kind of just agreed to do it for no reason. Their lives seem to be going well. But then it's revealed that none of them really are. They're all having issues at home. And this premise isn't like, oh, they're actually trying to test this theory. That's not what they're trying to do. They're using it as an excuse, like a teenager would.
Yeah.
I agree, because like I have so many notes of like, this isn't a true experiment, because if it was a true experiment, they wouldn't do this or that. But I feel like they could have continued to progress the plot via just like one of them at work having a flask and trying to reconnect with their youth and like being bad, or like pushing the limits a little bit, and then that like rolling into making worse and worse decisions.
Yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
in this scene, like Mitch said, Martin, after they bring up his problems at school, starts crying. They bring out wine, and Martin decides to start drinking. He drinks the entire glass of wine. They refill it, and then he downs it again, and he starts crying again. And they ask him, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And he says, "Nothing much. Nothing much is going on in my life." And this ties into what you're talking about, because I think they know it's a bad idea, but they just want something to happen. And a theme that comes up very often in this movie that I really like is the idea that when you're in your youth, one of the most romantic and lovable parts of your youth, and the reason why we love the youth so much in our culture, is because you're afforded the time to make mistakes. Because mistakes aren't just a thing that happens and then you suffer the consequences from them immediately. Not always. You can be in the throes of making a mistake for years and not even realize you're doing it. And when you're in your youth, that's the whole point. The whole point is to make mistakes and run into walls and figure out the world, And when you get old, you realize where all those limits are and what you're allowed to do and what's ends up in consequences. And so you get kind of, I don't know, docile, or I don't know, limited. You feel limited. And in your youth, when you're able to make those mistakes, you feel unlimited. And there is a love to be found in having the freedom to fuck up like that. So this idea that Martin wants something to happen in his life so much that he's willing to make an objectively horrible decision is, I think, overt on the writer's part. Anyway, so he starts crying and confesses to being dissatisfied with his life. They all make him feel better by recalling stories from when they first met him, when they were younger, and mention that he used to do jazz ballet, which will come up later. Have some fun at the restaurant. They walk home drunk as fuck and roughhouse each other, have a good time. And it's the first time we see Martin smile in the movie while he's laid out in a heap with his friends on the ground.
Sorry, I want to go back to something really quick. At the dinner scene when they're trying to like console Martin and be like, how's your life going? Tell us, like, be honest. What could have been like this genuine moment of like men talking about their feelings with other men. I feel like this movie ran into an issue that I feel like it runs into several times. The women in their lives like being not even like side characters, but like just being like, I don't know,
Objects.
Wallpaper.
yeah, like they're like, oh, you're not happy with your wife, and all of his friends suggest, have you thought about like trying it with somebody else? And it's like, whoa, these are bad friends. These are bad people.
I agree. I think that this movie's a little bit old fashioned. I think it has some problematic ideas in it.
It does not pass the Bechdel test.
At all. Doesn't even come close to it.
I don't know what Thomas Vinterberg's like views are or anything like that. I've watched interviews with him talking about this movie, and judging by how ceremoniously he describes people like Winston Churchill and old dudes who we look back on hindsight today and maybe shouldn't have idolized as much as we did. He talks about them in the way that your teacher in social studies class in high school probably talked about them as these war heroes, you know? So yeah, I absolutely think you're right that there's things like that throughout the movie. But I don't think his friends in this scene, when they suggest, have you thought about anyone else? Like, have you thought about having sex with anybody else other than your wife? We're doing so to try and convince him to do that. I think they were saying like, have you ever thought about that? If you have, that's a problem. Let's talk about it. So yeah, they drunkenly walk home. First time we see him smile is with his friends on a heap on the ground after they've been roughhousing and having a good time. And then the next day, he's seen in the shower. He's shot from below to make him look tall, strong, and powerful, which is like a very which is a very trivial shot angle, but it works because it's implied that this is the best he's felt in a long time when he's thrown caution to the wind and got drunk with his friends, which I think is kind of relatable. Martin's shown in class. He goes to school the next day and he goes into the bathroom and busts out a bottle of Smirnoff.
Hey, yeah, my note for this is Jesus, Martin, drinking at work. Like, not prepared. Like, I mean, I knew we were getting there eventually, but like, yeah, he just like, it wasn't like take a sip, before you go to work. It was like, no, I'm just gonna like down this vodka raw, like in the men's room. Very questionable decision making for sure.
Yeah. I knew that it would progress and get worse, but like from the get-go, not just Martin, but eventually all the other friends, they're just making dumb decisions from the get-go. And it's like, this isn't even the alcohol. That's just you. You just dumb.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And again, I think that's intentional.
Wait, can I ask you a question really quick, Ben?
Yeah.
Do you think this film is funny?
I think parts of it are funny, yeah.
Because I felt like I was waiting for a punchline so often and like for these moments to be funny, and they just never were for me. I don't know. I was just curious because the first act feels so played like a comedy, like Grown Ups was made by Danish folks, this feels like an Adam Sandler movie with European sensibilities. Like
every single time I laughed at this movie, it was out of relatable laughter. Like the characters would do something drunkenly together, and I'm like, I remember a time when I've been drunk with my friends and done that. I've never. I don't think the premise is inherently funny, and I don't think the character's behavior is ever played for laughs. There's a scene where like the gym teacher gets really drunk and dribbles a ball and then fucks it up and drops his keys, and that's pretty funny. But it's also, I think it's mainly a drama. I also don't think, me, I don't think genres are that helpful.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But
I'm just more pointing out that I found it confusing because it felt like it was supposed to be funny. Like that was where I was struggling. I was having a disconnect.
Here's what I will say. So, the Thomas Vinterberg, like I said before, like pins down a vibe for his movies, and as he makes them and as he has them edited, he focuses them on a specific vibe. But he just couldn't do that with his movie because it was trying to do so many things. And I think that is a flaw with the movie. I think what you're saying, I definitely picked up on as well, and I think it doesn't work. I think it tries to go in too many different directions at once, and some of the things that it goes in directions with, it doesn't provide any meaningful resolution on, and it feels unfinished.
Yeah.
And I think you could make the excuse that that's a consequence of the narrative about being about alcohol, kind of just laying it all out on the table because humans' relationship with alcohol is unresolved. There's a lot of differing opinions on it, and you're not going to get a complete answer. But I also think that that's kind of a cop out.
I felt that so hard, Mitch. Like I kept waiting for it to be funny, or I felt like it was a setup to a joke, and then I just was left with anxiety and dread and like, oh my god, why like that the ball dribbling scene that you were talking about, Ben, I was like, that did not make me laugh. That made me so anxious. I'm like, you are at work. There are children. Get your shit together. Like, oh god. Oh, oh.
Yeah.
I probably lost a year of my life watching this movie. I won't lie.
I think a lot of your reaction to this movie is going to be based on your relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. He's shown in the bathroom, drinking some vodka. And then he goes back to class. He slurs his words, but he's clearly smiling and feeling better. And then he goes out to his car and realizes he's too drunk to drive, runs into his friend, tells him he's too drunk to drive, and his friend drives him over to meet up with the whole group who had gone out the night before. And they talk about testing this hypothesis about getting drunk. They have rules for it, similar to the lake race. They have parameters for how they're going to drink. And the parameters, I can't remember what they are. I didn't write them down, but you can't drink after 8 p.m. You can only drink during work hours, and you have to keep your blood alcohol content at around 0.05.
And no drinking on weekends because that's family time. And the Lord.
Yeah.
Not that that's right.
Sorry, the scene before this with Martin teaching while being like a little tipsy started another thing that I was like really upset with that continued throughout the movie was like, you know, they're doing this quote unquote experiment to see if they are better at like their jobs and at teaching. One, they're not looking to see if they're better via like the approval of other teachers or their colleagues or principals, whatever. They're seeking the approval of the children themselves. And then two, I'm sorry, I don't think it made him a better teacher. He was just like, yo, Winston Churchill drank. You know that? Yeah.
Well, that's the next
you
thing.
elected you elected Hitler. Ooh. He was a vegan. You thought he would be chill. Like,
we'll get to that.
I don't know. To me, it seemed like he was better at getting their attention, but did not improve on teaching them the subject.
But Lucas, they all passed their exams. Of course, alcohol made him a better teacher. They all passed their exams, dude. It's
right.
The film proves you wrong. The film proves you wrong.
It does.
Spoiler alert. Sorry, that's in the third act. I apologize, but I felt.
How dare you?
Well, I think there is something to be said for being able to relate to your students.
Yeah, but
I'm not saying teachers should teach drunk. I'm just saying, you know.
No, I agree that teachers need to be able to relate to their students and they need to be able to connect with them, keep their attention, and make learning fun. But that's the thing. They can't just make the time fun. They have to make the actual learning of the subject matter fun.
Yeah. But I mean,
it's a movie. They're not gonna.
Yeah, they're not gonna show. Right, exactly. They're not gonna show that. It's implied that he taught them what they need to know because they passed their exams.
I guess for me, the implication wasn't strong enough. It just felt like he caught their attention and that's it. But yes, they passed.
Well, that's where the core narrative lies, with his ability to relate with the youth and therefore his younger self by proxy. But you're engaging with the intention of the artist right there, because Thomas Vinterberg talked about this movie being the question about like discovering alcohol. What decisions would powerful people in the past have made if they were sober rather than drunk?
Which I think is an intellectually uninteresting argument to have, but that's
Really?
yeah, I think
Why?
it's completely contrived, but whatever.
You know, really?
I disagree. I think it's interesting in the sense like what role did alcohol play in terms of humanity coming together and creating an agricultural society? Was that because of beer? Is that why we decided to grow grains? Like these, yeah, like people with different cultures coming together around alcohol because like the Russians are such drunks, and like that's something that we could be able to get along with. But I don't think this movie hits on that. I think it has that little cutscene where it shows Winston Churchill and like Greta Thunberg drinking. It didn't show Greta Thunberg, but
Yeah,
it
what?
showed them.
Angela Merkel.
Angela Merkel.
Hey, thank you, thank you. Oh my god, I'm sorry. Also, Angela Merkel, I'm sorry. I actually do like you a lot. I appreciate you. But like, I don't know. I felt like that was one of the things where it tried to do too many things. Like there was a hint of that, but it did not dig into that. It did not explore that in any meaningful or interesting way. For me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it explores it in the main character's life, right? Because things go right and they go wrong for him, and it's ambiguous as to what role the alcohol played.
Is it ambiguous?
Yeah, it is.
It is.
It absolutely is.
I don't think it's very
Because like,
ambiguous.
okay, so to hop forward a little bit, right? Like his drinking allows him he decides to have a canoe trip with his family, and connects with his wife that night, and that's presumably part of the alcohol. But then he later on has an argument with his wife, and she walks out, or he walks out, because of the alcohol, right? So I again, I think that is worth criticism, because it's kind of just showing you the two things and not necessarily like taking a side. It's just showing them.
I don't need
But
to
it
just
is,
take a side, but I just think it's intellectually uninteresting. That's my problem with it. Like the whole thing about like Churchill and these like it engages in this like great men view of history that like drinking is like somehow like part of that equation, and like a lauded part of that is a very perplexing thing, because none of the men that he's talking about were good dudes. And I don't think fundamentally Martin's a bad dude. Yeah, it's just like fundamentally my problem with the film is I don't think it's intellectually engaging to ask the question, is alcohol fun sometimes? Does it make you more lively at parties? Like is that an intellectually interesting premise? Like
that's not what
Like
it's asking.
if you've ever tried alcohol, you understand the movie. Like
yeah.
Yeah, well, you understand it on your own level, but everybody who's tried alcohol has a different relationship with it and understands the movie differently. I mean, it's such a surface level thing to say that all it's asking is alcohol fun? That's not what it's
No,
asking.
it's not
What it's
asking,
asking
it's
is
telling you.
yeah, well, yeah, it is telling you that because it's so blatantly obvious. But what it's asking is, what does alcohol do for you? Like, what is the role that it plays in a person's life?
it lowers your inhibition, makes you more confident, but if you drink too much, you get fucking dumb.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, those are all accurate, but like on a spiritual level.
Yeah, this is like part of my
And
problem is I don't think that's an interesting question.
I think it's an interesting question.
I don't.
Yes. It's like
Like and as somebody who like I think like psychedelics, it's more interesting. Like what does that do spiritually? Which I understand for people like it isn't as interesting. Like alcohol to me doesn't have that like aspect of like making you question about the world and art and this and that. Like alcohol is fun. It's a social lubricant, but like, you know, it is alcohol. We know it. I don't know.
it's the
But I
most
think you're
like
right.
widely consumed drug, and there's
What
nothing.
caffeine is.
Oh, sure, you're right. You're probably right.
I am right.
Not when this movie came out in 2020. Are you kidding me?
I mean, Denmark has a really big drinking culture.
Also, I will say I am curious about the reviews for this movie if they were different if they did not release in 2020 because I think 2020 was a heavy drinking to cope with the pandemic year.
Yeah, okay. So Martin Schroning, they all established that they're going to try this out. A key thing to note is Nikolai is shown sleeping on his couch with his child laying on top of him, and his child wakes him up by peeing on him.
Yo, I have been there with my dogs. I'm sorry, but like I have been pissed on and it has been rough.
That sounds awful. Okay, so the next day, Martin goes to class. He drinks in the bathroom again, but this time he brings a breathalyzer, and he's at the blood alcohol content that is goal of his goal. And then he's seen in class being more assertive, standing up, addressing his students directly, asking them direct questions. And then he does. I wrote this in my notes. He does the whole Hitler was a vegetarian and faithful to his wife, while the quote unquote good guys in World War II were pieces of shit thing. Uh, Hitler was a vegetarian, but Winston Churchill drank fucking gin and tonics before breakfast. Who would you vote for, sort of thing. But the idea that it's going for is that it's okay to make bad decisions, and youth allows you to do that. Peter is seen doing something similar with his students. The musician, he's connecting with them directly. They're all doing that. And then we also meet this kid Specs, who's playing on the soccer team. He's this tiny, cute little kid with glasses who his parents didn't bring him a water bottle. And he asks for some of Tommy's, but Tommy's is full of vodka. So he gets one of the other kids.
Okay. I am sorry, but this is what I mean by like they're not drunk yet, right? They decided to do this experiment. Tommy, what the fuck are you doing, Tommy? Like, why are you having a vodka and a water? But like, even I saw that situation coming where a kid was like, "Can I have some water?" Like, Tommy.
Well, also Tommy is the one with the least of a, I guess, reason to live. His wife left it implied in the movie, right? His wife left him. He seems the most depressed. He seems the most checked out of his job. So I guess it's believable he'd be the worst decision maker.
Yeah, Tommy was not built for this experiment. Like it definitely exacerbated some things for him.
Yeah.
Because from the early signs,
Tommy-
the other guys had all the like little successes where they're like bumping their fists because they like, you know, the cool kid in class gave him a thumbs up or something, you know, like whereas his Tommy is out there like dropping balls and like leaving keys places and stashing alcohol throughout the gym equipment room for some reason.
Yeah, so Martin goes home, connects with his wife a little more, and then this scene transpires where Tommy goes into the equipment room, and the janitors found all of his bottles of booze that he's keeping stashed there. He doesn't tell the principal, blames it on a kid, and then they all sneak off to the music room and decide that things are going so well that they should kick it up another notch by drinking even more.
Sorry, Tommy. I have in my notes. Tommy is a dumb fuck. I hate this. I'm anxious. And then two, why would they up the amount? It is already starting off on a messy foot. Like, I don't know. And like again, also if it's an experiment, keep it at that level. Do it for a long time. See how it's affecting you. Do it when you're like stop drinking and then see how that is like. But obviously, it's not an experiment. It's an excuse.
Right, exactly. It's an excuse. But yeah, they decide that this time they're going to try their own BAC. They're gonna ditch this premise, and they're each going to try and find a BAC that works for them. Whatever that means.
This is
Which is
definitely the point where I was like, the premise of this movie is too fucking stupid for me to like believe anything that's happening in it. For me,
Yeah.
like this is where the film like absolutely lost me, like completely, and I was like, okay, so more drinking equals more success. I guess we're just gonna reward this behavior in the film.
Well, they're not rewarding it.
The writers are. I'm not.
No, they're not. No, they're not. The character. This is not an unalloyed good.
Yeah, I think like the movie looks like drinking is helping them be more successful, but I do think overall the movie is like not trying to be like drinking is good. I think it's trying to be like, oh, drinking is good and bad, but in the end it's still like dumb because like we know
Exactly.
that.
It's like
But again,
this is around the point that I wrote. I would have turned this film off by now.
again, the premise is not just is drinking good or bad. That's not the premise. That's a surface level understanding of it.
No, oh, that you're the one saying that though. I'm not saying that that's the premise.
That's what Lucas just said.
That's not the premise.
He said,
It's asking these questions in this simplistic way, but it's like that's not what we're saying the whole film is. It's not like we failed to comprehend what the film is trying to do. It's about whether we intellectually think it's providing an interesting question, or whether the analysis that the things that it's trying to peer into through the characters are interesting and worth, talking about.
what do you think the question is? That is uninteresting.
You clearly have a different perspective that it's more about youth and like the lust for life, or asking questions about the nature of happiness and what degree substance consumption can aid or detract from that. That like can substance spark a lust for life? Can it can clearly derail your life. Everyone knows that, but it's an unflinching look into the potential benefits along with the negatives, and that to me intellectually is not very interesting. But that's my perspective.
That's it. I think it's very interesting.
Anyway, we continue with the synopsis. I just don't want you to say like, oh, we don't get it. We're not, we don't get it, or like that surface level
Well,
reading.
Though, yeah, the way you were describing it sounded like you weren't, but that sounds like you do. I think that's interesting. You don't think that's interesting.
It's like, I don't know, do hot dogs make or break life? Like a little bit of hot dog is good, but too much hot dog is bad. Like, yeah, we get it.
Again, see right there. That's essentially what you're saying is, if you equate that logic to the movie is about is alcohol good for you or is it bad for you? But that's not what the premise is. It's what is alcohol giving you? So the better
A
equation
good
would be like why
time, a bad time, a little of both.
again, that's very surface
yeah.
level. That's
Like,
very
I don't know.
surface level.
To me, this movie is like this person in a midlife crisis being like, the joy has been sapped out of life. How do I find that joy again? And then for the remainder of the movie, he seeks the easy solution, which is alcohol or substances or the quick fix. And then I don't know. I honestly don't feel like at the end he gets to the true fix of finding what is meaningful. He just realizes, oh, okay, substances can't provide joy. I have to find joy myself, and like that's it. Which
I don't think that's the conclusion the movie reaches. I agree with you that it doesn't reach a conclusion necessarily, but I think his drinking clues him into hints at what the answer is. It's not just is the alcohol helping my life, it's what is the alcohol doing for me that works.
giving him courage to be courageous and to, yeah.
Well, in my opinion, what it's doing is it's reverting him to a youth. It's making him a kid again, which is like that's not even really subtext, it's text. And like there's numerous parts of the movie where it's indicated cinematically, like during a scene where he's teaching his kids very energetically. At one point, he allows one of the other students to get up and start teaching the class, and then he's seen sitting down in that kid's seat and hanging out with all the other kids as if he's a student. There's a lot of points in the movie like that, and there's another point where we'll get to on further where it's like you can like reconnect with your old youthful self, and there's a lot of valuable things to be found there, but you can go too far and revert to yourself to being a fucking child. And what does that look like? What does it mean? And why isn't it healthy? But yeah, we'll get to that. We're getting kind of snagged.
Down. Yeah, we're a little bogged down in the second act here. So, or the beginning of the second act. So yeah, we got to chug a little bit.
Yeah.
Guzzle them beers.
Yeah. So yeah, they all decide to keep doing it. I think that scene is an excellent performance from every actor. There's a piano ballad playing in the background, and the camera just kind of floats around to each character's face. It's very, very theatrical. Um, and then we get that like Lucas mentioned earlier, we get a montage of the most powerful people in the world drinking and behaving like fucking children. Boris Yeltsin being drunk and stumbling around. Angela Merkel with a fucking pint or a beer stein. Um, a bunch of drunk motherfuckers who have led the most powerful nations in our world for years, drinking and acting like fucking kids. So Martin gets incredibly drunk the next day, fumbles around the teacher's lounge, and then walks into a wall and almost breaks his nose.
And like at that point, if the other teachers don't know he's drunk, they dumb.
They then go out and hang out again as friends, and then they all sit down on a bench. And Peter mentions that he would like to have kids. He's the only one in the group who doesn't have a wife or a family, and he mentions that he'd like to have kids. But the other mentions that he'd have to tidy up if he meant a woman. In other words, he'd have to grow up. And I like this scene because it's four middle-aged dudes cosplaying as kids, talking about what they want to do when they grow up.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool, but from y'all's perspective, I could understand how that would be annoying. Then Martin goes out and has a nice time with his family on a canoe trip and is seen connecting with his wife in more ways than one.
With the camping trip. So he decides to like book the camping trip on his own accord because he's drunk and feeling it, right? And his wife is like, "No, please don't do that." And they end up having like fun on the camping trip, but all of it still feels very one-sided. And I feel like this scene is trying to depict like the positive sides of alcohol, or the positive sides of like having courage and like taking a chance and taking a risk and doing it. But also I think there is like something to be said about like, yeah, you want to like do these outings with your partner, but you also want their consent. Like, yes, surprising someone is good, but you also want their consent on it. Especially like, I don't know, surprising someone with a vacation could also not be seen as a good thing. It could be seen as someone not considering their partner's emotions.
Yeah,
And it just felt like left out.
that's fair. That's fair. I don't think the movie really addresses it either. So him and his friends all meet up and decide to go even higher. They describe it as like transcendent levels of BAC, which is an unspecified amount. They're just going to drink until it makes their lives even better. Uh, and then Martin, after the canoe trip, initially says that he's out and he doesn't want to do this anymore. But then all his friends break out the drinks, the ice, the mixers, start
Peer
mixing
pressure, peer
Sazeracs.
pressure, peer pressure,
Yeah.
peer pressure.
And Martin puts his coat on and he's almost out the door, but then he sees the drinks and decides he wants one. So he goes over and has
And
one.
to be honest, I get it. A Sazerac is like, mwah, it is an amazing drink. It is an amazing drink.
Yes. So they all drink together. It's actually it's not a smash cut, but it's a very harsh cut to them just blitzed, absolutely off their rockers. They walk into a grocery store and they knock shit over. They go fishing and they're slurring that you can't understand what they're saying because they're slurring their speech so much. It's a mess. They're a mess. And then Nikolai, who at the beginning, this is one of my favorite details of the movie. Nikolai, who at the beginning had a child who peed on him while he was sleeping on the couch, is seen pissing the bed with his wife in it.
And she like is absolutely not having this behavior. She like, you can clean this shit up and I'm going to my sister's.
I did like that scene. I'm not gonna lie. Him pissing the bed, referring to like his own child, and like I did like that. That was probably not my favorite scene because it was definitely anxiety-inducing, but I enjoyed it.
Yes. Martin also conked out on the pavement in front of his house. He's got drunk and just fell in front of the neighbor's house. His kid, his child, finds him and has to cart his hungover ass back to the house. They have dinner the next night. His wife tells the kids to leave. They have an argument where Martin accuses her of cheating. And then he runs out of the house.
Well, he also smashes some shit, like showing
Yes.
alcohol's potential to ignite violence in individuals.
Yeah, it's not going great. This whole idea of drinking till the cows come home is not going great. He decides to go see his friend Tommy.
That is they this that's after though they all have another night, like they all have that come to Jesus moment after yet another night where they're just
Yeah.
like in one of their basements raging, and they wake up very sobered and like, we have to stop
And the
this,
study.
end the
Yeah.
study.
I wrote
Yeah.
down the study ends when they realize what I saw in scene 1.
Yeah, well, hey, they didn't see it. They were living through it. Yeah, they at that point they're drinking just to numb all the pain, and they decide they're not doing this. So Martin goes to Tommy's house and tries to keep him sober the whole time. And as he's leaving, Tommy says, "I don't need you guys to come over here and check up on me anymore. I'm good." And as he's leaving, he says, I'm rooting for you and your wife. And then he says something like, "This isn't worth it," or something. I don't know. After he goes and sees Tommy, it's shown that all the students that these teachers were helping do great on their exams and pass. But while all the kids are celebrating and having a good time, the 4 teachers can't, because they learned that Tommy went out on his boat while he was drunk and fell overboard and died.
It's also unclear whether it was potentially a suicide.
Yeah,
Like
he's
whether,
clearly drunk on the boat.
yeah,
I
like
mean,
he forgoes the life jacket, but that's like the question of it, sort of, because he's too drunk to really like put on his life jacket and go out on the boat. But in him tossing that, is that him an admittance that he's okay with dying out there, or is it just being a drunk idiot and he just drowned? So I think that's like something this scene has some subtext there.
there's
Yeah,
also that question of like somebody who ODs but wasn't intending to die. Like, is that a suicide? You know, does that considered a suicide? Also, before Tommy dies, doesn't the music teacher give the kid an idea to like, yo, just chill out and drink, have a
Yeah,
shot? Why
that
not?
is a scene that what like we haven't talked about, but like earlier in the film, there's this kid who's like crippled by anxiety, and he's like, this is in the middle of their experiment when things are going good, and he's like, have you ever thought about having a little sip before going into the test? And he's like, no, I haven't never thought about that. And then on the test day, he convinces, like, he sees the kid is visibly a wreck and like gives him a pep talk basically, and then like smuggles him in some alcohol to like calm the nerves. And surprise,
yes.
in fitting with the film's narrative, he fucking nails the exam, the oral exam.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's fair. I've met some lovely people in my life that I wouldn't have if I didn't have the liquid courage to go up and talk to them.
Sure, it's not the point I'm trying to make.
Wait, what is the point you're trying to make?
That the film views alcohol in an unhealthy way, generally speaking.
Is there a healthy way to?
Yeah, I think there are healthy ways to view alcohol and like
I don't
approach
think.
it, but
I don't know.
that's not what this film is interested in examining.
No, I think the film is saying that your relationship with alcohol is unhealthy, but it's okay to have unhealthy relationships.
What?
Oh
No, that is
no!
not at all. No.
I think like
Nope.
what these people need is like the courage to advocate for what they want or to advocate for their own beliefs, but they're using alcohol as a way to do that. And it's like you can get courage with so many other ways, like therapy, boys, therapy. Talk to your wife instead of just fucking booking a
Disappearing for years.
vacation.
Yeah, disappearing for years and then expecting her to be game the moment you decide to like care again for whatever reason.
Going not way back, but going back to like the scene where Martin and his like confronts his wife, or his wife confronts Martin. His kid does say like, you're drunk today, you were drunk, but we know that you have been drunk for like the longest time. And I also feel like that's, I don't know, very telling. Like they all thought they were hiding this like big secret, and I'm like, I bet people knew from like the get
Yeah,
go.
I don't think that's subtext either. I think that's just text because I think that
Yeah,
the whole movie's told from the four main characters' perspectives, and
yeah,
oftentimes there's overt hints dropped. Like when Nikolai's wife comes home and says, "Are you guys drunk?" And they're like, "No," and she's
yeah.
like, "Are you sure?"
I
Like
do love an unreliable
I do,
narrator.
I don't think that they think they're hiding it. I think that they're ignoring it, ignoring the fact that they're not hiding it. Which is what you do when you enjoy the effects of alcohol and you don't want to think about the negative ways it's impacting your life. All the kids do good on their exams. They go to Tommy's funeral, and Specs is there, the little cute kid who played on the soccer team and connected with Tommy. Earlier on in the scenes, Tommy is shown sort of sheltering Specs from the other mean kids and helping him win a goal in soccer, and it's very sweet. And Specs puts a flower on Tommy's coffin, and then they all sing a song for him. And in that scene, I kind of got the sense that they were like sending off one of their own because he was reverted all the way back to a fucking child.
Mm-hmm.
After the funeral, they go out to a restaurant to reminisce about Tommy. They enjoy a drink with their meal and tell stories. Peter is dating somebody. Nikolai and his wife are doing well. And then Martin gets a text from his wife telling him that she misses him. And this is the biggest criticism I have in this movie. Every conflict is just resolved instantly right here,
Mm-hmm.
effortlessly.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and then basically to like hammer it home, like all the high schoolers who get this dope ass drinking parade, by the way. Like, wish we
Yeah.
had that. Like, when we
Yeah, what the
graduated high
fuck,
school,
America?
yeah, that was dope. They're like on the hay bales, just like, yeah, motherfucker, we graduated. And then, like, they all see him and they're like, oh shit, Mads Mikkelsen, get in here, bro. And they start drinking with the teenagers and the famous dancing of the Mads Mikkelsen.
Yes, the
Caps
the
off
the
the
movie
film.
ends with Martin dancing his ass off, probably jazz ballet to a song. And then it ends with a shot of him flinging himself into the water, which is, Tommy fell into the water and died, but Martin flings himself into the water, never feeling more alive.
Mm-hmm.
I do like I think it's like right before, or right at the beginning of him dancing. He's sitting out on the pier, like he was drinking with the students, and he's sitting out at the pier, like 20 feet from where Tommy died. It's interesting.
Yeah. I think so. The main conflicts of the movie at that point revolve around all the main characters and their struggles in their personal lives. So Peter doesn't have a wife and a family, even though he wants one. Nikolai is struggling with his wife and his family, and then Martin's wife has left him because he's drinking so much. And it's all resolved effortlessly. They don't. I mean, they've stopped drinking, sort of. They're drinking with their meals, but they're shown drinking healthily, I guess, responsibly, like alcohol ads want you to. But it's sort of like a Deus ex machina. It just kind of comes out of nowhere and ties everything up without the main characters actually doing anything.
Yeah,
And I think,
to me, it didn't feel earned. Like it's a
yeah,
great scene in a lot of ways. It's probably like one of the more enjoyable, but I feel like the film didn't earn that ending. Like it didn't do enough footwork in the previous. I think the second act is extremely weak in this film for me, and that's why the third act feels like this sort of cavalcade of events that just ends in "C'est la vie, we party on."
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, do you want to like go around the horn and say like any closing thoughts or any further analysis you guys want to talk about?
It's very theatrical. There's a lot of cool little details in it that essentially drive a pretty straightforward script. But I do think it's still pretty incomplete. A couple of the ideas that the movie has, like telling a loose cannon every perspective tale of alcohol, is just an inherently bad idea and ends up feeling unresolved.
Yeah, my closing thoughts are I think there is some merits to the film, and I think Mads Mikkelsen, especially like the acting, I think is quite good, especially Mads Mikkelsen. But yeah, I think the base premise that it's exploring is intellectually shallow for me and doesn't really provide me with any food for thought.
I wanted this to be a movie about like finding joy in life again, about like losing that and trying to rediscover it. And it felt like it was just a movie about alcohol. Like we saw the first step in a character going through a midlife crisis of like, let me try the quick, easy solution. Okay, that didn't work out. And now I know that. And that's where I felt like the movie ended. But I wanted to explore more how to reconnect to that joy of life because there's so much beauty in life that sometimes we are so used to seeing that we take for granted. And I wish that there was more of that.
Ben, it's your film. Give us your out of 10.
I give it a light to decent 7.
Blah, 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 blah. For me, it had Mads in it, so automatic 2 points. No, yeah, overall, I think for me, it's like a 3 out of 10. Like, it had some ideas that didn't pan out, and I wanted it to do more. And if I was like not watching this for the podcast, I don't know if I would have finished it.
The fact that there's movies you guys can't finish is incredible.
Well, that's the thing for me, though. I usually finish a movie no matter what, but
Same.
it wasn't like,
So you're saying any 3 out of 10 and lower, you won't finish?
no, but it's gonna take the right situation to finish. I might like
Mhm.
pause it and come back to it later, but or I might just
Okay.
like, watch
Alright,
in the
yeah.
background.
For me, I
Sure,
need
yeah.
a certain degree of buy-in. I like Lucas. This is a 3 out of 10 for me. I'd say it's a strong 3, a hearty 3. I think I could be convinced that that's a bit harsh and bump it up to a 4, though. I think I could probably get to a 4. But any film that I think I want to turn off about an hour in is hard for me to.
Oh yeah, so we're gonna introduce a new segment on this podcast where we each go and source an unhinged review of the movie online and share it with you.
Doesn't always have to be unhinged, but I like the idea, like, because I've seen some pretty unhinged shit on Letterboxd, so I just wanted to highlight that community a little bit.
Mine's pretty short, so okay. So this is a Rotten Tomatoes review from an individual named Julian Wood from Australia. The hangover kicks in before the film is fully played out.
That's nice.
I like that. I have two, a longer one and a shorter one. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. It's a
Hard
new
for me to
segment.
decide
We're
now.
figuring this out, right?
So the longer one, which I will parse down, is I liked the movie, but let's focus on the dog situation. Please tell me that he was found and hugged, given treats, and lived a very long and happy life. I cannot take another dead dog in Mads' movie. It has gotten to the point that whenever I watch a movie with Mads and a dog shows up, I'm not like, oh my god, so adorable. I'm like, oh no. There were two dogs here, and I was stressed as fuck. I desperately need Mads to play the owner of a luxurious dog hotel where nothing bad ever happens. Anyways, Merry Christmas, everyone, and drink responsibly.
I'd pay for that movie. Wait, so who left that review? Cite it.
Harlequinade on Letterboxd. The other one that I had is from Brendan. Mitch, I'm not taking yours, right?
Oh, Brendan O'Hare.
It was Brendan. All I got is Brendan.
Okay, then I think we're okay.
They should have done this with water
Damn
instead.
it was mine.
Well, actually, it was Brendan's.
Yeah, but yeah, that was the one I picked. They should have done this
I'm
with
sorry.
water. It's all good. It's
I'm
all
sorry.
good. So let's go, Brendan. It's a great take. It probably would have worked out better for everyone if they had done this
Yeah.
with water instead.
So next week we're just gonna do one movie. Whose week is it next week?
The schedule says it's Lucas's week.
Lucas, what movie are we watching?
We will be doing The Killing of a Sacred Deer with Barry Keoghan.
I'm excited for this one because I've never seen a Yorgos Lanthimos movie, and I've really, really wanted to. I've been dying to.